Now, I like these principles because they make common sense. But think about how this works. People make mistakes. Now, y'all agree with that? I mean, people make mistakes. That's the reality of the way we are. Nobody is perfect. That's a part of the hearts and minds approach. We approach rules like, if I give the rules out, nobody should ever break them. People are going to be in 100% in compliance, and it surprises us when people are not. Is that true? Think about it. How many of you have had this reaction? Somebody gets hurt within your organization, and the first thing that goes through your mind is, what were they thinking? You ever thought that? Or you sit back and think, I told them not to do that. Or they knew better than to do that. We just talked about that. So you have these thoughts that automatically pop into my mind when an event occurs. And we approach it as if people don't make mistakes. And so the reality is just the opposite. It doesn't matter how good your rules are, people still are going to have that propensity to make mistakes. And so HP is about recognizing that fact. We're not perfect. And so if we're not perfect, we have to be able to set the tone, we have to be able to set the rules, we have to put barriers and defenses in between us and the risk. Because at some point, we will make mistakes. Now, the reality is, though, the other principle is that errors are predictable. Now, they're not random like we think. People make mistakes, and you can predict when. I mean, if I think about when I am most likely to make a mistake, it's when I get frustrated. Is that true? I mean, it's the same. Or what about when you get in a hurry? We make mistakes. If I get too many things moving at the same time, what do? I make mistakes. It doesn't matter how good I am at a task, these different factors come into play. It's predictable. I can make mistakes. And so if we know it happens, we know it's predictable. The other thing that's a key is that the principle of organizations influence mistakes. Now here's the hard part. We tend to think that person messed up. They violated that rule on purpose. Not always. A lot of times the person just, again, made an error. But we don't think about the fact that an organization sometimes leads that person to a point where they're going to make a bad decision. Sometimes we put the pressure on people that help pushes that mistake indirectly. So organizations influence mistakes as well. And I can guarantee you, when you're doing an incident investigation or you're analyzing an event that happens, it's hard to put on an event sheet saying that, hey, the organization contributed to this. It's a lot easier to say the person did it and screwed up. Is that true? But that is not reality. That's where the mind and the heart is not connected. We have to understand in the hearts and minds approach that we are fallible, we will make mistakes, and we have to be resilient in the fact that we have to separate the two. We have to try to minimize mistakes the best we can through the organization, through our rules, but we also have to be able to make sure that when the mistake happens, we're insulated from the result. But the other thing is, leaders influence mistakes. And leaders will make comments. I've made them myself that, hey, I told them not to do that. We had a meeting last Monday telling people not to do that. But yet, if we don't go follow up, if we're not visible and holding people accountable, if we don't monitor, we don't coach, we don't check, guess what? People still make the mistakes. Just because we say it, just because we email it, just because we throw it on a slide, it doesn't change the way people act all the time 100%. They still make mistakes. So leaders and the way they respond make a huge difference. So our response towards correcting people, monitoring people, coaching people, all of those things set the tone for what's important. So again, people make mistakes. The principle is we predict errors. Organizations influence those errors. And leaders have a big impact when they respond the right way, but they have an impact too when they respond the wrong way. And so when you wrap that up, that last bullet is just states that we can control the losses. But the thing is, we got to connect the heart and the mind. Just because we say it, email it, talk about it, doesn't make it true until we really see the need for it and we follow these types of principles. Does that make sense? So all of HP sort of generates from this origin when we talk about what's going on. Now, depending on what consultant you listen to or what podcast you listen to or what book you read, you'll see different wording in these principles. You may see an extra one or one less, but essentially it all boils down to number one, people make mistakes. And so I think that helps me think about how I can make the biggest impact in safety.